Alright, well, looks like the streak of good indie racing games continues. After Tokyo Extreme Racer, we now have the next Japanese-inspired racer lined up. JDM Japanese Drift Master has been around for a while, even playable in various demos over the years. And I'll admit, I was always rather skeptical of the game. To me, it seemed more of a style over substance type of game. The last demo, titled Rise of the Scorpion, was still rather rough around the edges, and while I enjoyed it somewhat, I wasn't yet fully on board with this particular game. But now, I was able to form some thoughts and opinions on the full final release, as the developers kindly sent me a copy of their game to try out. Mind you, this video is not sponsored, nor did I get anything in return for covering this game. I just made this video because I have a lot to talk about. And because I like stalling some of my other bigger videos. Being a full-time procrastinator is what they call this, I believe. So as you could surely read from the title of this video already, JDM really surprised me with how much better it got since the last demo version. If you've never heard of this game before, JDM focuses all around the art of drifting, taking place in the fictional prefecture of Gontama. And the location is likely the game's biggest draw for many people. It's exactly the kind of map pretty much everyone has always wanted in an open world racing game. Basically what they did here is take the highlights of various Japanese locations and put them into a blender. So you have winding mountain roads, small towns in the outskirts, a highway system, and a large city to explore, with so much more in between. Every nook and cranny is beautifully decorated and filled out with details, making each spot feel unique and special. There's so many hidden away spots that could absolutely make for online car meets in the future. In fact, it's pretty interesting how the game didn't need any form of collectibles or the like to make exploration rewarding, because the places alone were built intriguing enough for me to wander around them on my own accord. There are even homages to popular Japanese racetracks like Ebisu or Tsukuba, just expect there to be a few creative liberties taken. The map also manages to feel pretty lived in, the trademark easily being the falling cherry blossom leaves, but you can also spot planes taking off really close to the ground. Earlier on, I noticed the existence of an airport on the map screen, so obviously, being the weirdo that I am, I decided to check if the direction of the plane made sense for a takeoff. And it did. Which goes to show the lengths the map designers went to in order to make the environment feel authentic. It's the kind of map I could fairly easily immerse myself in, where I actually enjoyed slow cruising for a change, and having usable turn indicators as well as manual lights and windshield wipers only made the experience even better. This only gets amped up with the various weather effects you'll encounter as well, which also drastically changes the way your car behaves, in a way that made me realize how little rain usually affects car handling in other games. I really cannot understate how impressive this map is, not just on a visual level, but also a playable one. A fairly common complaint with, well, any racing game map of the last decade has been that the roads are usually way too wide and don't make for fun driving sections. JDM is basically the answer to many people's wishes. Many roads here are extremely narrow and dodging traffic becomes a genuine challenge. Really, the only time you're able to let loose is on the highway, as everywhere else you'll be fairly restricted in terms of track width. The positive side effect of this is that even low speeds can feel incredibly fast in this game. Doing anything more than 100 in some of the smaller cities had me on the edge of my seat, which I really cannot say about many other racing games, where speeds even in the 200s can feel rather boring. Couple this with a handling model that is very clearly tuned to make every car go sideways, and you'll get a racing game where, for the first time in a very long while, I actually didn't mind driving to locations instead of just fast traveling everywhere. Which brings me to the handling model. Now this is a pretty tricky topic because the focus of this game is the drifting, so it should be observed through a different lens as most other racing games. Interestingly, there are two handling models available: Arcade and Simcade. Arcade basically prevents your car from spinning out unless you really force it, and generally assists your drifting pretty heavily, whereas Simcade gives you more freedom over the car's rotation. For the most part, I much preferred the Simcade handling model, as it doesn't feel too different from the arcade one anyways, just with less artificial interference. If you're really struggling with the handling or have never tried drifting in anything that's not Need for Speed, then arcade will probably make things easier for you, but I would encourage most experienced people to stick with the Simcade model. When it comes to drifting, there's a pretty sharp learning curve. It's one of those easy to learn, hard to master ordeals. I think comparing some of my early steps in the game with some of my later attempts shows this pretty well. And really, it was very satisfying to get better over time. All of my gameplay has been on a controller, so I can't say how the handling feels on a keyboard or wheel, but there's full support for both available if you'd rather use them instead. Of course, large parts of the handling also come down to your choice of car and how you built it. So let's talk about that next. The car list itself is rather slim with only a handful of models at the time of release, but the selection is what really shines here. Besides your classic must-have models for a game like this, there's also deeper cuts like a Honda Beat, a Nissan Laurel, and best of all, a K-Truck. One that I couldn't help myself from buying and tuning into an absolute drift monster. There's a fairly extensive upgrade and tuning system here that makes it possible to get the most out of every car. So for example, with my K-Truck, I was able to rear-wheel drive swap it and add a turbocharger, which is the secret sauce to make it go zoom. And going zoom was even more fun thanks to the integrated Eurobeat radio, which, can I just say, how has it taken so long for another racing game to have Eurobeat? In fact, the entire soundtrack here is surprisingly good. Between various EDM genres and rock, there are also pretty wild radio stations for stuff like Chinese rap music, funk, because of course, and even city pop, which was such a vibe. In general, the entire game sounds surprisingly nice, with great engine sounds and very convincing tire screeching. But let's get back to the tuning garage for a second. Outside of upgrades and tuning, you also get to deck out your car visually with lots of customization options. The standout here, however, is definitely the interior customization where you can swap out the wheel, shifter, seats and more. Really, it's the closest thing to Midnight Club LA we have gotten since then. And I don't know why it took a Polish indie studio to get here, but I'm glad. The only noticeably absent thing currently seems to be a livery editor, but there's a good chance I may have not unlocked it yet, as I only got a few hours into the game. If there is none, I hope they add one in a future update, as that would make JDM arguably the best game for car customization with licensed cars. Well, mostly licensed cars. But what is it you actually do in JDM? The main portion of the single-player content is a story mode that's told entirely through manga pages. Yeah, sorry anime-only people, you gotta learn how to read now. These pages appear pretty frequently and tell the story of a young driver from Poland moving to Japan, trying to start a new chapter in his life due to getting in lots of trouble previously in his home country. Early on, your protagonist makes friends with a girl whose dad runs a sushi restaurant, and since money doesn't grow on trees, he decides to work as a delivery driver for him. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the plot, but so far it seems fairly interesting. There's actually rather serious topics at play, such as abuse and death. Maybe a little much for a game like this, but at least it keeps the stakes high. What I found more interesting is how the missions work together with the story. So if it's your turn to deliver sushi to a customer, you better do it quick, but stylish, and don't ruin the sushi on the way. The missions stay pretty fresh throughout, and you're usually doing something else every time. Whether it's impressing a girl on your passenger seat, or running away from someone who may or may not try to kill you. I'm telling you, this story takes some crazy turns. So now that I have spent the last 10-ish minutes glazing the game, it's time to talk about a few of the negatives. I think number one on that spot is definitely the performance. For your reference, I'm using an RTX 3070, which isn't exactly top of the shelf, but is more than good enough to handle Forza Horizon 5 at high to maximum settings with well over 60 FPS. With JDM, I noticed fairly frequent stuttering and frame drops on high settings and DLSS on quality mode. This definitely got better over time, which leads me to believe it's got to do with Unreal Engine's good old shader compilation. But even then, I would still hit frame drops every now and then. To be honest, it wasn't ever anything game-breaking, and for someone like me who grew up playing PC games at less than 20 FPS, I started to arrange myself with the performance after a while. But if you're someone who cannot stand stutters and frame drops, or might even get nauseous from them, I would suggest waiting a while for better optimization. I also had one game crash while tuning my car, but other than that the game ran mostly fine. It's not exactly optimal, and I really hope the devs stay on this, as people tend to get really annoyed at bad performance. It's pretty much what killed EAWRC and many other modern games. While I praised the handling earlier, this was mainly in reference to the drifting. There are points in the game where you are supposed to go grip racing as well, and it just does not feel as good as it should. It feels like every car understeers way more than it's supposed to. Even when I switched cars, tried various tunes or messed with assists, every car tends to really slog its way through corners. Once again, there's a non-0% chance that I missed something important, but even the loaner car you get in the tutorial missions is fairly slow in turns, albeit not as much. This eventually got to a boiling point in Chapter 2, Event 8, which seems completely impossible. The AI opponents have way more grip or turning radius that I could never hope to have, so this is kind of where I got stuck. I even tried upgrading to a different car that was heaps better, but this event in particular is such a dramatic difficulty spike that I think needs to be addressed. Furthermore, when I wanted to switch to a different car for this event, that was easier said than done. Currently there don't seem to be all that many side activities to earn money in the game. The only thing I could find was drifting on my own for high scores or time trialing, both of which is not exactly exciting. There are markers on the map supposedly for other activities coming soon, but I don't know if this means as I progress throughout the game or to be added later in an update. Regardless, I think there could be more to do in the game, especially activities that leverage the open world more, as it really is the standard feature of JDM. So with all that in mind, would I recommend this game? I think I would, yeah. As someone who was once very skeptical of it, I think they managed to make a game that's genuinely fun to drive in. I could obviously go on about stuff like the multiplayer and update content, but honestly sometimes I just want a game to cruise around in. I don't want to do any time-limited events, I don't want to sweat in competitive matches, I don't even want to play with friends. Sometimes I'm just overwhelmed with the state of the world and feel overstimulated by everything around me. That's when I want to just get into a game, put on some good music and enjoy myself. And I think that's exactly the area that JDM nails. It's exactly that kind of game for me, where I'm perfectly happy doing absolutely nothing. There's still areas in the game where you can compete with people on online leaderboards and the like, and if that's what you're really interested in, by all means, more power to you. But for me, JDM is my new favorite chill-out game. And if you have been looking for an experience like that, you'll definitely get it here. A big thank you once again to the team at Gaming Factory for letting me play their game early, and I hope all of you enjoyed this very spontaneous review. Now, enough procrastinating for me, I have more videos to finish. I hope I'll see you there, and until then, take care everyone.